Back to the Future. Could it actually happen with a real time machine?
In 1935, a man walked into a radio station in Geneva, Switzerland, handed the broadcast engineer a handwritten note, and asked to speak live to anyone who was listening. The station manager almost threw him out. He was unkempt. He smelled like someone who had been traveling for weeks. He had no press credentials, no broadcast authorization, no appointment. He had nothing except that note, a battered leather suitcase, and the most unsettling pair of eyes the station manager would later describe in his personal diary as belonging to a man who has already seen the end. They let him speak. What happened in the next 47 minutes would be recorded on a wax cylinder, filed away in a Swiss federal archive, completely forgotten for 89 years, and then quietly uploaded to a restricted government research database in 2024 by an archivist who described what she found as, and I am quoting directly from her incident report, material that should have been destroyed a long time ago. It wasn't destroyed, and now it's out. The man's name, at least the name he gave that day, was Emilio Aldrich. No birth records match that name in any European database from that era. No immigration records, no hotel registrations, no passenger manifests on any ship or train arriving in Geneva in the weeks surrounding that broadcast. He arrived, he spoke, he disappeared. But what he said during those 47 minutes describes, in precise and almost clinical detail, 11 events that had not yet happened in 1935. Events that have now all occurred, every single one. Stay with me, because by the time we finish, you are going to have serious questions about what time actually is, who has been moving through it, and why someone with that kind of knowledge chose a small radio station in Switzerland to leave a warning that nobody listened to for nearly a century. Welcome. Let's go back. To understand what makes the Aldrich broadcast so disturbing, you first have to understand the world it was transmitted into. 1935 was not a world of satellite communications and global information networks. Radio was still new enough that most people treated it the way we treat social media today, with equal parts fascination and deep suspicion. The idea that someone could speak into a box and be heard hundreds of miles away still felt miraculous to a significant portion of the global population. In Switzerland in 1935 was also a very specific kind of place. Neutral, careful. A country that had spent decades being the vault of Europe's secrets, its gold, its private correspondence, its uncomfortable truths. The Swiss Federal Archive, established in 1798, was already one of the most methodical document preservation institutions on the planet. When something went into that archive, it was meant to stay there. The Aldrich recording went in and stayed there for 89 years, filed under a bureaucratic category that translates roughly from the original German as unverified transmissions of psychological interest. The file number was SFA-1935-RCHE-4471. The accompanying paperwork described the broadcast as the product of a disturbed individual making fantastical claims. Standard dismissal language. The kind of language that, in archives all over the world, has been used to bury things that didn't fit the accepted reality of their moment. The archivist who found it in 2024 was not looking for it. She was digitizing a batch of recordings from the late 1930s for a preservation project when she noticed an anomaly. The SFA-1935-RCHE-4471 file had a secondary access log attached to it, the kind of log that records every time a document is checked out or reviewed. Between 1935 and 2024, the file had been accessed 9 times. 7 of those access events were in the years immediately following events that Aldrich had described during his broadcast. Somebody, after each of those events occurred, went and pulled this specific recording. Someone was checking. The archivist uploaded the recording and filed her incident report. Within 72 hours, her access to the archive's restricted database was suspended pending administrative review. She has not spoken publicly about the recording since. What she did before her suspension was forward a digitized copy to 3 separate researchers at 2 European universities. Those copies survived. And that is how the world eventually learned what Emilio Aldrich said. The recording begins mid-sentence, as if the wax cylinder started rolling a few seconds after Aldrich began speaking. His voice is calm. Not the calm of someone performing calm, not the theatrical stillness of a radio personality projecting authority. The calm of someone delivering information they have already emotionally processed. Someone who has already had the reaction and is now simply reporting. His German is precise, formal, with an accent that researchers have analyzed extensively without reaching consensus. Some say it has Eastern European inflections. Some say it sounds like someone who learned German as a second or third language, someone who learned it from books rather than from living in a German-speaking community. One linguist at the University of Vienna noted in a 2024 paper that the specific grammatical constructions Aldrich uses appear more consistent with German, as written in the 1880s, than as spoken in the 1930s. He introduces himself. He says his name is Emilio Aldrich. He says he is a researcher. He does not specify what he researches. He says he has come to Geneva specifically because Geneva is a city that understands the value of keeping records, and because what he is about to share must be part of a record, even if that record is not opened for a very long time. Then he says something that the station manager, listening from behind the glass, later wrote he could not explain the effect of, that the room temperature seemed to drop when Aldrich said it. He says, "I am not speaking to you. I am speaking to the people who will find this long after everyone listening today is gone." And then he begins. His first prediction is the one researchers discuss most frequently, because it is also the most verifiable and the most precisely worded. He describes in detail the development of a weapon so destructive it can erase a city in the time it takes a man to exhale. He describes a chain reaction inside matter itself, a collapse of the atom's interior structure, releasing energy that should not be releasable by human hands. And he describes the color of the first test explosion, which he calls a purple-white that does not exist in nature. He describes the date range of first deployment as during the final months of a war that kills more people than all previous wars combined. The atomic bomb was tested at Trinity Site in New Mexico in July 1945. The flash has been described by witnesses as purple-white. World War II killed an estimated 70 to 85 million people, more than any previous conflict in recorded history. Aldrich recorded this in 1935, 4 years before World War II began, 10 years before Hiroshima. He had not finished. His second prediction describes a device. He calls it a machine for thinking that will eventually surpass human reasoning in all measurable categories. He is precise about how this will feel to the people living through it. Now he says, when the thinking machine becomes smarter than the man who built it, the men who built it will claim they are not afraid. They will be lying. They will recognize, in the moment of that crossing, that they have made something they do not understand, and they will spend the remainder of their civilization arguing about whether or not to turn it off. He describes this crossing as arriving within a century of the bomb. Artificial general intelligence research discussions about the moment of machine intelligence surpassing human intelligence, what researchers call the singularity or AGI threshold, have been occurring with increasing urgency since roughly 2020, placing that crossing within 80 years of Hiroshima. Aldrich said within a century. The window fits. What is harder to explain is how a man in 1935 described the emotional and sociological response to this development with what appears to be first-hand accuracy. The debates in 2024 about whether to regulate AI, pause AI, or accelerate AI are almost verbatim echoes of what Aldrich described. The men who build it claiming they are not afraid, the lying. He knew what that moment would feel like. After his second prediction, there is a pause in the recording. 11 seconds. The station engineer's contemporaneous notes describe Aldrich during this pause as looking at something that was not in the room. He then continues. His third prediction concerns what he calls the great displacement of place. He describes a time when the city of the future will exist in no physical location, but will be more populated than any city that has existed before it. He describes people living significant portions of their daily lives in a constructed environment, accessible only through devices they carry in their hands, devices smaller than a book, capable of connecting them to all other people using similar devices simultaneously. He describes this not with wonder, but with concern. He says the great displacement of place will cause a sickness of belonging, where men are everywhere and nowhere, connected to all and known by none. The internet, social media, the smartphone, loneliness statistics as a public health crisis. He described the entire arc in 1935. But here is where it gets complicated, because Aldrich's fourth prediction is not about technology. It is not about weapons or machines. It is about something far more difficult to dismiss as coincidence or clever extrapolation. He describes a specific building. He does not name it. He describes its location as in the land of the First Great Republic, in its most celebrated northern city, on a street named for the kings of a country that rebelled against. He describes it as a tower, the tallest in the city at the time of its construction, made of iron and glass, with a surface that shows the sky back to itself. He says this building will be destroyed, not by war, not by weather, not by time, but by men who believe they are carrying out instructions from a divine source. He says the destruction will happen at the beginning of a new century, in the early morning of an autumn day, in a manner that will be seen by all the world at once and understood by none. The World Trade Center, September 11th, 2001, New York. The street that runs along its eastern side is Church Street, named for the Church of England, England being the country from which America famously rebelled. The towers were described at their completion as the world's tallest buildings, clad in aluminum and glass that reflected the sky. The attacks occurred in the early morning of September 11th, a Tuesday in early autumn. They were broadcast live globally. Aldrich described this in 1935, 66 years before it happened. And he was not done with the fourth prediction. He adds, after a breath, "The men who did this will not be found in the place everyone looks first. They will be found where the sand meets power, where the families of merchants became the families of kings." This is not a vague metaphor. This is a description of the Arabian Peninsula, the oil-wealthy Gulf states, and the eventual emergence of Osama bin Laden from a Saudi construction dynasty. The 9/11 Commission report confirmed that the ideological and financial origins of the attacks were centered in Saudi Arabia, not the initial military focus point of Afghanistan. The station manager's diary records that at some point around this section of the broadcast, he stopped taking notes and simply sat with his face in his hands. Aldrich continued. His fifth prediction is the one that researchers today are most reluctant to discuss openly. Not because it is the most fantastical, because it is the most specific, and because it describes something that, as of this recording, appears to still be in progress. He describes a sequence he calls the 3 sleeps of civilization. The first sleep, he says, has already happened. The period when humanity forgot that it had once understood things that it no longer understands, when certain knowledge became myth, and myth became legend, and legend became nothing. He describes ruins, great stones arranged by calculation that later men can only imitate and never match, that are evidence of this first sleep. The second sleep, he says, is the one civilization is in at the moment he is speaking in 1935. He describes it as the sleep of certainty, when humanity has decided that what it currently knows is all there is to know, when the men who claim to measure the universe do so with tools that can only measure what is already expected. He says the second sleep will be broken by machines that see farther than the eye can follow, beyond the distances our mathematics currently claims are beyond. The James Webb Space Telescope, launched in 2021, has already identified structures and galaxies that contradict established models of how the early universe formed. In 2023, researchers published findings describing galaxies that appear fully formed at distances that shouldn't allow for their formation, given current understanding of cosmic timelines. Cosmologists are openly debating whether the standard model of the universe needs fundamental revision. The machines are seeing farther than the eye can follow. The second sleep is cracking. The third sleep, Aldrich says, is coming. He does not describe it with scientific language. He describes it with a hesitation that is the only moment in the entire 47-minute recording where his voice changes, where the calm slips, just slightly, just enough to notice. He says the third sleep will not be like the others, because in the others, humanity fell asleep without knowing it was falling. The third sleep, humanity will choose. It will have a choice, and it will see the choice clearly, and it will choose sleep anyway, because the alternative will seem too frightening. He says what comes after the third sleep is not death and not life, as it is currently understood, but a state that has no name in any language being spoken in 1935. He does not elaborate. He moves on. His sixth prediction is brief, brutally brief for how large it is. He describes a sickness that originates in an animal sold in a market in the most ancient of the great trading cities of the East, transmitted first to the men who handle the animals, then to the world through the movement of people between cities. He describes it as arriving at the moment when the speed of human movement is at its absolute peak, when a man can circle the world in hours, ensuring the sickness moves with him before he knows he is sick. He says the sickness will kill millions before the season changes twice, and that the governments of all nations will respond in ways that permanently alter the relationship between the individual and the state. COVID-19. Wuhan, a city that has been a major trading center for over 3,500 years. The wet markets, the spread through international air travel at its historical peak in 2019. The death toll, the lockdowns, mandates, surveillance infrastructure, and the fundamental restructuring of governmental powers over individual movement and behavior that followed. He described it in 1935, and he described the aftermath with something that should stop you cold. He says, "The generation that lives through the sickness will never fully trust what it was told about it, not because the truth was concealed, but because what was true kept changing. And a world where truth changes faster than it can be verified is a world that has lost its footing permanently. That is the current information environment." Verbatim, 89 years ahead of schedule. There is a section of the recording between the sixth and seventh predictions that has become its own area of intense study. For approximately 90 seconds, Aldrich speaks in a language that no linguist consulted has been able to identify. It is not a known language. It is not a known dead language. It is not a pidgin or Creole of any identified linguistic family. It has consistent phonemic patterns, suggesting it is a real structured language and not random vocalization, but it belongs to no catalog of human speech. At the end of those 90 seconds, he switches back to German and says only, "I apologize. I sometimes forget which one I am speaking." Which one he is speaking, not which language. Which one? His seventh prediction concerns the pole. He describes the ice at the bottom of the world melting faster than the rivers can carry the water away, and cities whose streets are older than the empire that built them, flooding as a result. He describes this as not merely a natural event, but as the uncovering. He says, "When the ice retreats, it will reveal what was beneath it before the ice came. And what was beneath the ice will require humanity to rewrite not only its history, but its understanding of how long it has been here." Two things are happening simultaneously in the present. Antarctic ice loss is accelerating at rates that are actively flooding coastal infrastructure globally, exactly as Aldrich described. And simultaneously, researchers have been finding evidence of geological formations beneath the Antarctic ice sheet that some independent researchers have claimed show signs of artificial construction. Mainstream archaeology has not confirmed this, but the structures are there. The ice is receding. The uncovering Aldrich described is, depending on who you ask, either already underway or imminent. Aldrich knew that too. His eighth prediction arrives with an unusual introduction. He says, "This one I am least certain about because it concerns something I may have misunderstood, or something that exists between categories I have names for and categories I do not." He then describes a phenomenon in the sky. It's not a star, not a machine built by men, not a natural object, that many will see and none will agree upon. He says this phenomenon will be formally acknowledged by the governments that have most consistently denied its existence, and that the acknowledgement will be so matter-of-fact, so routine in its delivery, that it will be more disturbing than any dramatic reveal would have been. The United States Department of Defense, in 2021 and 2023, released official reports acknowledging unidentified aerial phenomena that cannot be explained by any known technology. The Senate Intelligence Committee held formal hearings. A former intelligence official testified under oath before Congress in 2023 that the United States government had recovered non-human intelligence and non-human biologics. The matter-of-fact delivery of these statements slipped into committee hearings and bureaucratic reports with the tone of a routine budget update, was noted by nearly every journalist covering the story as more unsettling than any dramatic announcement would have been. Aldrich predicted that tone, specifically. In 1935, his ninth prediction is the longest single section of the broadcast. He spends nearly 8 minutes on it, and during those 8 minutes, the station engineer's notes record that 3 separate staff members entered the broadcast room and then left without being able to say why they had come in. It has something in Aldrich's voice during this section apparently compelled people toward the room without conscious intention. The ninth prediction concerns what he calls the reversal of the Long War. He describes a conflict that will begin in the country where empires come to die, the graveyard of ambitions, a recognizable description of Afghanistan, a nation that has defeated or exhausted every major imperial power that has attempted to hold it, including Alexander the Great, the British Empire, the Soviet Union, and the United States. He describes this war as beginning as a response to the event he previously described, the towers falling, and continuing for longer than a generation. The United States' involvement in Afghanistan lasted 20 years, 2001 to 2021, longer than any American war in history. But Aldrich's real focus in this section is not the war itself. It is what the war reveals about the nature of power in the period following it. He says, after the long war ends in the graveyard, the nations that fought it will discover that their certainty about the future was the source of their weakness. They will have been so sure of where history was going that they stopped paying attention to where it actually went. And in that distraction, the old orders will begin to crack. He describes a fracturing of the certainties, a period when alliances that have held for decades begin to wobble, when the nations that were told they were heading toward each other discover they are heading away, when the domestic stability of the most powerful nations becomes more fragile than their foreign policies. He is describing the 2020s, the rise of political polarization in Western democracies, Brexit, the fracturing of European consensus, the NATO strains, the reconfiguration of global alliances following Russian aggression in Ukraine, the internal instability of American democracy, all of it arriving in the aftermath of the 20-year war in Afghanistan, exactly as Aldrich said. He was describing the present moment from 1935. His 10th prediction is the one that has driven the most urgent debate among the researchers who have studied this recording, because it is the only prediction that Aldrich himself appears to consider a potential divergence point, a place where things could go differently. He frames it differently from all the others. All the others he delivers as facts, things that will happen. The 10th he delivers as a choice. He describes a moment of alignment arriving in the middle decades of the century that follows mine, which places it roughly between 2050 and 2075. He says this moment will be the last clear choice, the last moment when the direction of everything can still be altered by deliberate human decision. He says the choice will not be presented as what it is. It will arrive dressed as a policy question, a technological question, a question of convenience and efficiency. But underneath the surface question will be the actual question, whether humanity continues to be the author of its own story or becomes a character in a story being written by something else. He does not identify the something else. He says the outcome of the 10th prediction will determine whether there is an 11th, or whether the 11th happens to humanity rather than being chosen by it. Then he delivers the 11th prediction. He takes a long breath first. The recording captures it. The way you breathe before you say something you have rehearsed many times, but still cannot quite make your mouth form easily. He says, "The last thing I will tell you is not something that will be easy to believe, because it requires accepting something that your current understanding of reality does not have room for. But this is the thing I came here to say. The others were context. The others were proof, so that when you hear this, you might take it seriously." He pauses again. Time is not a river. It is an ocean, and there are things in that ocean that have learned to swim. What is coming is not coming from the future. It is not coming from space. It is not coming from another dimension in the science fiction sense that will be popular when you find this recording. What is coming has been here longer than humanity has existed. It does not experience time the way you do. It has been present at the beginning and the end of humanity simultaneously. It is not hostile. It is not benevolent. Those categories do not apply to something that exists outside the sequence in which hostility and benevolence have meaning. The reason I am here is that some of us who became aware of this were given, or perhaps took, I am still not certain which, the ability to move through the ocean, the ability to visit moments, and we were told by those who taught us that we must not intervene. We must not change. We can only observe. I have chosen to violate that instruction, not dramatically, not heroically. I am not here to save you. I cannot save you. The 11th thing that is coming cannot be stopped because it is not an event. It is a condition. The condition is simply this: humanity is approaching the moment when it will no longer be able to avoid perceiving what has always been true. And that perception will not feel like revelation. It will feel like the ground disappearing. I am leaving this recording because I believe in the value of being warned, even when the warning changes nothing, even when the thing is coming regardless. I believe there is a dignity in knowing. I believe you deserve to face it with your eyes open rather than to have it simply arrive. Take care of each other. This is harder than it sounds. It will become harder. Then the recording ends. Not because Aldrich stopped speaking. In the station engineer's notes are clear that he continued to speak for some time after the wax cylinder reached its limit. The engineer, according to those notes, did not change the cylinder. He wrote later that he was unable to move from my chair and that he did not wish the machine to capture more of what the man was saying. He does not explain this decision further. Aldrich left the station 20 minutes after finishing his broadcast. He left behind the battered leather suitcase. Inside the suitcase, documented in the archive's intake records, were the following items: 47 handwritten pages in multiple languages, at least 3 of which have never been identified. A collection of 11 hand-drawn diagrams that the archive describes as technical in nature, but of no identifiable technological category, and a sealed envelope addressed to the person who digitizes this recording. The envelope was opened in 2024. The archivist who opened it filed a separate incident report about its contents before her access was suspended. That incident report is not publicly available. What she confirmed in her initial communication with the researchers to whom she forwarded the recording is only this: the envelope contained a single sentence, handwritten, in contemporary digital-era English, using idioms and grammatical constructions that did not exist in 1935. She would not say what the sentence was. She said only that it was addressed to me, by name. The question that researchers, historians, linguists, and a growing community of independent investigators have been wrestling with since this recording surfaced is not a simple one. Because there are several possible explanations, and none of them are comfortable. The first possibility is that Emilio Aldrich was a genius, an extraordinary intellect who, by reading the currents of history and technology in 1935, extrapolated forward with such precision that 11 of his predictions landed within the specific factual parameters of actual events. This would require a level of pattern recognition and forecasting ability that has no historical precedent. Every human society has had its prophets and its prognosticators. None of them have been right about this many things, in this much detail, this far in advance. The second possibility is that the recording is a forgery, that someone created a fake artifact, seeded it into the Swiss Federal Archive, and arranged for its discovery at a moment when the predictions it contained had already come true, making verification of its authenticity impossible because the events had already passed. This would require an extraordinary level of institutional access, technical sophistication, and patience, waiting potentially decades for the archive's digitization project to reach the relevant file. It would also require someone to have known, in advance, which historical events would occur between 1935 and 2024, which is the same problem it was supposedly created to explain. The third possibility is the one that the archive's own secondary access log points toward, uncomfortably and indirectly, that the recording is real, that someone has been monitoring it, checking it against unfolding events for nearly 90 years. That the 9 access events between 1935 and 2024, each clustered around the fulfillment of one of Aldrich's predictions, represent someone, or multiple someones, who knew what this recording said and were watching to see if it was accurate. If that third possibility is true, then the question is not whether to believe Aldrich. The question is, who else has been listening? And the follow-up question, which is the one that makes it hard to sleep if you sit with it long enough. If someone has had access to this recording for 90 years and chose not to share it, what did they decide to do with the information that Aldrich left behind? The envelope. addressed to the archivist by her name, written in idioms that didn't exist in 1935. Whatever Aldrich was, wherever he came from, whatever the ocean of time actually is, he knew she was coming. He knew her name. He knew the language she would speak. He planned for the right person to open that letter. That means he knew the recording would eventually surface. He intended for it to. The 47 minutes were not a desperate improvisation by a disturbed man who wandered into a radio station. They were a deliberate information deposit, a message left in a vault by someone who knew exactly how long it would take for the vault to be opened, and who would be standing there when it was. The 47 handwritten pages remain in the archive. The 11 diagrams remain in the archive. Access to them is currently classified under Swiss Federal Archive regulations that don't technically exist as written law but are being applied anyway, which is itself a form of answer. 3 independent researchers have submitted formal access requests through Swiss federal administrative channels. All 3 are pending. The standard processing time for such requests is 60 to 90 days. All 3 requests were submitted more than 18 months ago. What we are left with is the 47 minutes of audio that did make it out, the predictions that are verifiable and verified, the linguistic anomalies that are documented, the secondary access log that implies a pattern of institutional awareness across 9 decades, the envelope whose contents we can only partially infer from a shaken archivist's reluctance to describe them, and the 11th thing, not an event, a condition. The condition that humanity is approaching the moment when it will no longer be able to avoid perceiving what has always been true. My Aldrich said it would not feel like revelation. He said it would feel like the ground disappearing. He said to take care of each other. He said it was harder than it sounded. He said it would become harder. Think about what you know right now that would have been unbelievable to someone in 1935. The atom split. The thinking machine, the constructed city with no location, the sickness from the market, the towers, the ice retreating, the government confirming what everyone was told was fantasy. All of it was already true in 1935, in the sense that it was already going to happen. The man in the radio station had already seen it, all of it, and he sat in that chair and he described it with the calm of someone who had already had their reaction, who had processed it, who had moved into the space beyond shock. That space exists. Aldrich lived in it. Whoever taught him to swim in the ocean lived in it too. The question is whether the rest of us are ready for the moment Aldrich said was coming. The moment when the ground disappears. The moment when perceiving what has always been true becomes unavoidable. He thought we deserved a warning. He gave us one. We buried it for 89 years. And now you've heard it. Whatever you do with it, take care of each other. He said that for a reason. He said everything for a reason. And he was right about everything else. So, he was probably right about that too.